everybody, it's RS and J Studios, and today I'm going to teach you how to turn this box into a Schleich barn. First, you need to cut the tape attaching the bottom flaps of the box together, which as you can see I've already done, and then open the flaps. Then you need to cut one of the corners of the box. As you can see, I've also already done that. So you can lay the whole thing flat on the ground, like this. Now you need to plan out the layout of your barn. You're also going to need a Schleich model to help measure how big the stall should be. I'm going to make these flaps be the walls. It's just a lot more simpler to use a flap that's already attached than to cut off another piece of cardboard and then try to glue it to the cardboard and then make sure it doesn't fall off. It's just way easier to use this as the wall. Now we have a problem. As you can see, these fences are going along the line that's going to show where the flaps are going to fold up. So the actual floor is going to be this big. Whoopsie. But when I put a horse here, and let's say that's the end of the stall, you can see there's just enough space for another stall on the other side, but there's no space for a hallway in the middle to walk the horses down. So that's not going to work. I could also say that this is going to be the end of the floor. The doors will be here, and the stalls will be here, and the hallway will be in the middle. But then the hallway is going to be huge, and there's only going to be space for like 4 stalls at most. And since I'm going to all the trouble to make this barn, I prefer to fit more horses in. One thing I could do is to use this flap as the wall, and then put this flap down and use it as part of the floor, so there'd be a horse here, and a hallway in the middle. But then I would have to cut off another flap from somewhere else and use it as the wall, and that's just going to be a lot of extra hassle. And since I don't really care too much about having a hallway in the middle, and I don't really want to do all the extra work, I'm not going to do that. But if you do care, that's an easy way to fix this problem. Excuse the noise in the background, that is my dog eating. Anyway, so the fence is showing approximately where the end of the stall is going to be. Here is just going to be a hallway for the horses to walk in, and there are going to be the stalls. I know it's not the most realistic setup because most barns have stalls on either side of the hallway, but I'm okay with that. That's just what I'm going to do. The stalls have to be both long enough for the horse to stand like this, but it also has to be wide enough for them to stand like this. So let's measure out the approximate length of our barn. So that only gives us about space for 3 stalls. I don't like that, so I'm going to say that this extra flap is also going to be part of the barn. Now you need to figure out how many stalls you want to divide the entire length of the barn into. You need to measure the length of the entire barn, and then you need to measure the length of your horse, and then you need to divide the barn length by the horse length. So, as you can see here, the barn is going to be approximately 29.5 inches. I'm just going to round that to 29. And the horse is between 6 and 7 inches. Well, if I move this back here, and yeah, about 6 inches. So now, let's divide the barn length, 29, let's just say 29.5, divided by 6. So that's 4.91. That's pretty close to 5. So 5 is the number, 4.91 is the number of stalls we can have. But obviously, we can't have 4.91 stalls. We either need 5 stalls or 4 stalls. Because 4.91 is almost 5, I'm just going to say 5 stalls. I'm going to divide the barn length into 5 approximately equal stalls. Now, in order to figure out exactly how wide each stall gets to be, we now need to divide 29.5 divided by 5, because 5 is the number of stalls. 5.9, that's going to tell us the width of each stall. So, a bit less than 6 inches. It doesn't need to be exact, obviously, but, get it as close as you can. If you want to be exact, you can always multiply this by the fractions of an inch. So, I have 8 little marks inside each inch. So, I could multiply this by 8, and then that would be 47.2 marks. So I could count off 47.2 of these little marks, but I'm not going to do that. But, if that's your thing, if you want to be super exact, go ahead, do that. Obviously, this is only my procedure. You can obviously make the barn longer or shorter, fit more or less horses. If you want, you can make the stalls a lot smaller, but that's just not realistic, and I try to stay with realism. I don't really want to make the barn much bigger because I need space in my house for other things. And this barn is a prop for a new series we're working on, and no spoilers, but the barn doesn't need to be that big. The next question is whether you want to leave the ends of the barn open. Here's what I mean. This is the barn. The fence shows where the end is. Now, do I want a wall here at the end, or do I want to leave the end open? Now, both ways are fine. I've seen lots of barns with both ends simply open, no door, no wall, nothing. And also, obviously, some barns use doors and they close the ends. Making an end is more work, but you might like the look of an end better. I don't know. Both ways work. Now, for reasons of our series, I need to close at least one of the ends, maybe both. I'm not sure. So I'm going to fold this end up, and that's going to be one of the ends of my barn. So in the end, this is what my stall is going to look like. The stalls are going to be 7 inches long and slightly less than 6 inches wide. It's going to be 29 inches long. These are the stalls. This is the doorway. These are the edges. One of the ends I'm going to just leave blank, and in one of them I'll cut a door. Now, just to be clear, you can obviously use different measurements, make your barn different lengths, make your stalls different lengths, leave both walls open, shut them both. It doesn't really matter. Do what you want. But the general idea here is to use boxes to make a barn out of almost all one piece, and that makes it much sturdier and easier than if you need to cut each piece and glue it together separately. I am going to need 4 stall dividers. See here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 stalls. And then also I'm going to need cardboard to put in front of the stalls to keep them from walking out the front. Cut material from the ends, which rise way above the barn, in order to use them for the stall dividers. Now, let's get to the real work. The stall dividers are about the stall walls are about 5.5 inches tall. That means that the ends of the stalls also need to be 5.5 inches tall. Or slightly more if you want to make them taller in order to show that's the end or something, but I prefer to just keep everything level. You lower this edge, you put your tape measure against this line here in order to keep it straight, and then you measure 5.5 inches. When you've got it, put a small pencil dot on there so that you know where to cut later. You should draw a line across the length of the board in order to know exactly where to cut. In order to keep the line level, measure here again. Then move your tape measure, put it on top of one pencil line, stretch it across to the other pencil line, and you'll have a nice straight line straight up across the board showing you exactly where to cut. There might obviously be some tiny errors that keep it from being 100% exact, but don't worry about that. For the purposes of a toy barn, it's gonna look completely fine. Make sure to draw a really solid line so that you don't miss it. Using these flaps to make the stall dividers. Because they're not going to be part of the walls, it's fine. I can cut them. So since the stall dividers are going to be 7 inches long, I'm going to cut 7 inches off this one, 7 inches off this one. That's going to give me 2 stall dividers. These lines tell me where to cut. I'm going to leave this bottom part on here in order to help keep the walls of the barn up here. Don't worry if you don't understand what I mean by that. I'm kind of terrible at explaining things. You're going to see what I mean when we get to that part. Here we go. I cut all this stuff off. Now you can cut it with scissors, which usually leads to a slightly more frazzled edge. Or if you have something, you can put something flat and sturdy along the line and then run your knife along it. But then you want to be very careful to not push your knife through and cut whatever's under it. And then also, you got to make sure that you're responsible with knives. Right now, the stall dividers are just as tall as the walls. That's just ridiculous. So what I'm going to do is cut them in half, make them half as tall, and then that'll give me 2 stall dividers. So I'm measuring this in centimeters because centimeters are smaller, so they're going to give us a more precise measurement for such a small piece of cardboard. So it's just a teensy bit less than 13 and a half inches. 13 and a half inches is 13 and a half centimeters are 6 1/4 centimeters. So I'm going to find 6 1/4 on here, draw a line, blah, 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 cut it in half, and then do the same for the other stall divider. Actually, I was wrong. Half of 13.5 is 6.75. Sorry, got mixed up there. Here we go for stall dividers, and yay, that's as many as we need. I'm putting them away where I won't accidentally use them for something else. Now, see what I meant about this flap being able to hold up this wall. So I flop this wall up, then I bend this flap over here. I'm going to glue them together, and then they are going to keep each other up so that this wall is going to stay sturdy. And I'll do the same thing on the other side. Now, I can probably cut this to make it smaller and less obvious, and I'll either put it outside or inside. I prefer to hide this, so I'm going to put it on the inside, but, you do you. If you prefer to leave it on the outside, do that. Here's my line across the other end of the wall. Now, if you needed more stall dividers, you would want to measure out how many inches approximately this is, and find out how many stall dividers you want, and cut it specifically to fit the length of the stall dividers. But I don't need any more stall dividers, so I'm just going straight across. So, boom, 7 inches. So the door cannot come like here because that doesn't leave enough space for the stall. It needs to be here or further to that end. So I'm gonna leave a gap here, some cardboard here, and then cut it here until the door is going to be slightly smaller than the hallway. Slightly narrower. Here we go. This pencil shape here, that's where the door is going to be. This is the pile of scrap cardboard, which I've cut off from the main piece so far, which I'm going to use basically anytime I need it throughout the rest of the construction of this barn. So right now, this is what it looks like. There's the door. And yeah, I'm going to start gluing the barn together. I'm using an epoxy glue, which means it's 2 parts. I need to squirt both of the parts onto the cardboard in equal measures, mix them, and then stick the pieces together. But you can use basically any type of glue that is sturdy enough to hold it together. So like wood glue, super glue, epoxy glue, whatever. Use something to push the join pieces together so that they don't fall apart, and so that when they harden, they're going to stay together. I'm pushing them against the wall, and I'm also going to put something on the outside here and here so that it doesn't fall. Like this. Whoops. Apparently, I measured wrong, and this piece is too high, so all I'm going to do is just cut it.
Oh yeah, when gluing the wall together, just make sure to look at it from the side to make sure it's nice and straight. This, to me, seems pretty good.
I've glued this part of the wall. Now, I'm going to cut out this section of the cardboard for windows. Phew, cutting windows is tough. But now, let me just glue this side. Okay, so now those corners are drying, and yep, I accidentally cut this. I'll have to fix it. And so now, what am I going to do about this gap here? Well, I guess I'll just have to patch it up with a piece of cardboard. Now that everything is drying, these are here to hold the patches in place. I'm going to draw lines here where I'm going to glue the stall dividers later. So I divide 29.5 and come to 5.8. So basically, I just measure with my tape measure, put a dot at around 5.8. Then once I've drawn that line, I add 5.8, and that tells me how many inches further I need to draw the line, and so on and so on. This line shows me how far out the stalls are going to come, and sorry, my dog's barking. And yeah, this is where the front barrier, I guess, of the stall is going to be. Thick dots show where I'm going to put my stall dividers. The divider is going in like this: straight edge on top and in the front, more frazzled edge on the bottom and towards the back. So pick it up and then put a line of glue here and here with on the sides that are going to be pressed against the wall and the floor. Like this. Then press it into place. I'd recommend putting things on both sides to allow it to set properly. Like that. Okay, stall dividers are in. Now I need to think about the doors and the front. I could just attach some hooks and do this thing where they just put like a loop of yarn in front, but I think that looks really unrealistic and kind of sloppy. Plus, it wouldn't really work for our series, no spoilers, so I'm going to have to make some doors. But like I said, I don't really care too much about it being super pretty, so I'm probably just going to take some cardboard, attach it on one end, and then make it bend. So what I mean about the doors is I made a fold here, and so you can just swing it open, close it like that. So here we go. The barn is completed. Now if you're like me, you're thinking, okay, fine, it's a barn, but it is so ugly. What can we do about that?